This is my old Thai market dog, and this is me. Okay, this is me. And this is us together, spying on the neighbours. In this video I'm going to tell you all the story of their life and use DNA based science to find out if my old mate really is a Labrador. So to tell this story properly, first we have to go back all the way to 2014 before this one was even born, because originally my plan was to move to Canada, and only for the relationship I was in falling apart, that's probably what I would have ended up doing. I didn't really have a plan, and so I travelled a lot in 2014, and towards the end of the year I joined my brother and some friends to come and celebrate New Year on a 19-day holiday in Thailand. And then I just didn't leave, didn't get on the plane, and then ended up staying for 60 days, and by the end of the 60 days I'd signed a contract for a restaurant which had to be built and stuff. So I went home for 6 weeks to sell everything I owned basically and get ready to come back. So when I got back I knew that I definitely wanted a dog, but I didn't know yet what type of dog, and I wasn't really sure where to go to find one. I'd heard bad things about this one man, that there's a night market in Phuket. It's a very good market actually, but there's a pet section of it, and I was told to steer clear of the guy that sold pets there, this big fat man. And I'm not being horrible when I say that, but he was a very, very large man. He didn't look after the pets well, and blah blah, stay away from him. So I was like, okay, fair enough. I did a bit of research and I went round and I was checking all the different pet shops and stuff and seeing who they recommended, breeders and stuff, and are they reputable, and wasn't really getting any, like, one person would say someone was good and then the next person would say, oh, I don't trust them, or whatever. And then finally I got a number from someone. I got the same number off 2 or 3 different people, and they were like, we're not saying he's good, but he's okay. So he's about an hour north of where I lived. So I drove about an hour to his house, and he said to pull up at this car dealership opposite a gasoline station. So I pulled up and called him, and this was, I guess, slightly before the days of being able to share location and smartphones and stuff. It was 9.5 years ago, so I'm not sure what kind of phone I had. His English was limited at the time, my Thai was non-existent, and we started to sort of argue because he was like, I'm there, and I'm like, no, I'm there. And then I put him onto a Thai guy who was standing nearby, and it turned out that about 100 metres up the road was another car dealership with a gasoline station directly opposite it. So we were right beside each other, but miscommunication. So anyway, he drove down, pulled up to outside where I was, put his window down, and it was the big fat man from the market that I'd been trying to avoid. So I could have just saved myself an hour driving up north and weeks of going around trying to find out someone reputable by just going to the market and buying it off him in the first place. So anyway, I'm there now, so I say, all right, go on, I'll follow you. And we go to his house, and as I was expecting, it wasn't exactly very nice. Not evaluating his house, but I mean the conditions for the animals. He had tons of different dogs, pretty grim. They were all in cages. It wasn't very nice. There was a few Alsatians that were his, old, underfed, dirty, grotty, horrible smell of dog everywhere, as you'd expect. The first cage had the biggest, nastiest, angriest dog I've ever seen in my life in it. It must have been 80 odd kilo. I'm not sure, maybe some sort of pit bull, bulldog mix or something. Its head was about that big, and it just wanted to eat me. We had to walk past it. It was so angry, I couldn't believe it. I was there to see a golden retriever, little boy. He was only 4 weeks old, so obviously I was just going to pay a deposit and then come back and get him 4 weeks later. And I don't know why, but I did not warm to this golden retriever for whatever reason, and which is a strange thing to say because I love all dogs. But I picked it, and I just didn't think like this is my dog. And I said no, and I think I was a little bit disappointed and put off by the fact that it was this man that I'd tried so hard to avoid. So I was leaving empty-handed, and he said, well, what about this and what about that? I was like, no, and he said, what about Labrador? And I said, yeah, I want Labrador. And he said, I've got a girl, and I said, well, I really want a boy dog. So he said, just come back and have a look. So we went back, and in this shed, basically, at the back, was 2 Labradors. One was a boy and one was a girl. And I said, well, what about the boy? I said, I've already sold the boy, they just haven't picked him up yet. It started to rain. So I said, I really don't want a girl. And she was stood in this cage. She couldn't even turn around, I don't think, in this cage. A couple of very big ticks on her and that. And felt sorry for her, but she wasn't the dog I went there to see. So I was like, no, I'm just going to go. Got on my bike, started the engine and that, started to drive away. I had the mental image of her there in the cage, and I just thought, you know, what sort of character could drive away? Just thought, you horrible, horrible bastard. You cannot leave that dog there. He didn't have the mum and dad, and he'd sold all the brothers and sisters, and she was the last one that he'd not sold. In this tiny little cage, all dirty, and she's beautiful, beautiful. So I turned around, I went back, I knocked on his door and I said, give me that Labrador. I'm not 100% sure on price. I think maybe he wanted 10,000 and I paid him 9. But it's possible that he wanted 9 and I paid him 8. Whatever he asked for, I know I paid 1,000 less. I think I might have paid 9. But it's the best money I ever spent. What a great little dog she's been. You ready? Love. Go on. Yeah, get it in. Good girl, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. Good girl. Good girl. What a good little girl. You are. Some chicken for that. What a good girl. Yes, you are. You'll have to get a little bit. There we go. Alright. Good job. So she was 8 weeks and 3 days, I believe, when I took her back to, I put her in this, I had this tiny, not like a rucksack, but like, you know, like a school bag. I put it down by my feet on my Honda Click and I put her in it. And I said to her, don't you wee inside that bag now. She stank of piss anyway though, I mean, she smelled pretty darn bad and needed a good old shower. The first night, I think I probably already showered her by then because she did smell bad. But she just kept hiding underneath the toilet, sort of underneath behind the tubing and stuff in the corner. And I showed her a bed and let her know that what toys were hers and stuff. So I would have really liked to add in some photos now of her as a puppy and show you her progression. But when I bought her was sort of the beginning of the digital sort of period. So this one behind me and the 1 or 2 that I've been able to find by trawling through years of Facebook is literally all I've got. I didn't back anything up and I can't, or if I did, I can't find any of it. So all my phones and laptops and everything that I was using 9.5 years ago are gone. So I just don't have any of that stuff. I only have the more recent stuff, which is a shame. And within about 3 days, pretty much had a house trained in terms of weeing and pooing because she's obsessed with food. So when she realised that she got a treat every time she did a wee or a poo outside, within 3 days she was happy to just go outside and do one. And the same with sitting down, giving the paw, lying down, stuff like that. She picked up everything very quickly. She's very, very clever. Okay, so it's about 10 to 2 in the morning, 1:45. And I never ever drink alcohol normally. Like the last time I had a beer was about 6 months ago, literally 1 beer. I was invited out tonight, it's Friday, and I went and had 4 or 5 pina coladas and 1 beer also. And about midnight I got a text message from Embark saying that the results for the old girl were ready. Now I want to have a look, and so that's why I'm recording myself after I've had a few drinks, because I want my response to be genuine. So anyway, here we go. Before I do, let's make a little prediction. She's not going to be 100% Labrador. Her face is a little bit too thin and long. Her face is more like a golden retriever, but golden retrievers have longer, fluffier hair. She has the shorter hair of a Labrador, so maybe, you know, I'm going to go with a little bit of both. I'm going to go with about 40% Labrador maybe 25% retriever, and there'll be a few randoms maybe. She has all the characteristics of a Labrador. She adores food, you can't fill her, she's always hungry, she'll eat anything. Always hungry, always hungry. She loves balls, she loves chasing the ball and bringing it back to you, she loves swimming in the water. Always happy, always in a good mood, not aggressive at all, just your stereotypical Labrador. She did look a lot like a Labrador when she was younger, but her head, in my opinion, compared to European Labradors that I'm used to, her head didn't expand out. She didn't have that fat head of a Labrador. Also, because of the guy I bought her off, had no papers and stuff, I just thought she's probably just some random soy dog that looked enough like a Labrador that he picked her up off the street, the bastard. To be fair, I don't really think that, but I have always had my doubts. And so this will put an end to them to an extent. I don't completely trust this test either, but it will be nice to know kind of scientific what she is. It makes no difference to me whatsoever because she has been such an amazing, marvellous dog, and touch wood, I'm still going to have her for a few more years, I hope so. If anything, they say mongrels or like mixed breeds live longer, so I hope she is a mixed breed because all I want now is longevity. The big problem during the first year was that she was very, 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 very destructive. She was a little bit naughty and very, very hyper, like very hyper. And at the time I didn't really have many people come round to my house, and so when people did come, she was a nightmare. She just wouldn't settle down, and even after like an hour, people would just leave. People would just, I'm going mate, like, you know, you had to put her in the other room and then she'd be barking and stuff. And it was sad because obviously, like I say, I opened this restaurant and my dream, or at least my vision of what was going to happen was that I'd be in the kitchen cooking and that, and the dog would be hanging out in the sort of public area getting strokes and you know, whatever. And then it turned out she was too wild and I couldn't actually take her there, so I had to leave her at home all the time, and every time I came home she destroyed something. I thought I could do it slowly, like put her on a thing and leave her in the corner and people could go and give her a stroke when they wanted to, or ignore her if they wanted to, but she'd just bark and bark and bark and bark all the time. She wanted attention all the time. If I let her off the lead, she came straight into the kitchen with me. Obviously you can't have a dog in a kitchen. So the first few months in particular were really difficult. Still feel a little bit guilty about that to this day, where she was on her own a hell of a lot during this period of time, and I wasn't really able to, I just couldn't. I was working all the time, and there was a while when I was seeing a Russian girl that was probably quite good for her, but the dog, I mean. Anyway, I'd been staying in the same room for about 10 or 11 months, and she'd eaten the bed frame, the bedside cabinets, the wardrobe. She'd scratched the wall and everything, and finally one day, obviously I knew I was going to have to pay for it all. One day I guess the cleaners came in and said to the owner, bit of damage in that room, and so the lady came down and said, oh, you know, the state of this. She said, look, I want you to buy all this stuff and just get out, basically. And I said to her, well look, I'll buy all the stuff, but I said, once I own it all, you might as well just let me stay, because it's just my stuff that she's damaging then, innit? So she said, yeah, all right. But right after I paid her husband came round. He was this Aussie guy, and he was always kind of trying to throw his weight about and acting like he was a big hard man. I remember one day, this is a side story, I remember him trying to throw his weight around one day, and there was this Russian kind of like semi-professional fighter. The Russian was half his size, but he said, look mate, he said, please just hit me. He said, I'm sick of you shouting in my face, just hit me. He said, because I'm a trained fighter. And he said, if I hit you first, I'll go to jail. He said, just hit me. He said, I will fucking destroy you. He said, think just because you're a big man. He said, I'm tired of you shouting in people's faces. But anyway, this was his personality. And when he came round, he was shouting basically and giving it large. And I said, look, I spoke to your wife about this yesterday. I've already paid, I've bought all the stuff. So, and he was just like, no, we want you out. So shortly after this, I decided that this restaurant thing was not for me. If you look, I won't go into it. I've made videos about it. I also did an interview with Pete on Thairish Times, which I think has got about 150,000 views. You can check that out as well if you like. if you want to know about my restaurant experience, you can watch that. At the end of the day, I decided that was it for me. So now I was in a situation where I had a dog that I loved, and I'd had her for well over a year, and it wasn't really working out in Thailand. I couldn't make any money. I knew I had to leave, but I didn't want to leave the dog. And so now I'm in an awkward situation where, what do I do with this dog? So I did what any self-respecting, fully grown man would do, and I called my mum. So I said to my mum, I've got this opportunity abroad outside of Thailand to go and do a bit of work, but I don't know what to do with the dog. I've had her for over a year, I love her. I really can't trust anyone with her. My mum didn't live in Thailand at the time, and so I had to send her back to Ireland. It wasn't easy, and it ended up costing about €2,000, so I actually got myself into debt, because at the time I didn't really have, as I say, any money. It took about 3 months, it takes forever. First thing, I had to take a blood test, and then I had to send that blood sample to Belgium to be analysed to make sure that she didn't have rabies. And then I think it's a 90-day window from when you first took it. She can't travel in them first 90 days, but once those 90 days are gone, you then have another 90 days. It may have changed since then. You have to fly them in that second 90-day window. Now, I can't remember why she wasn't able to come on the plane with me. Maybe I already had my ticket or something, but she had to fly as cargo, which was more expensive. I just wanted her to go as additional luggage. She couldn't. And then she was like 1 centimetre too big for the next box size down, so I had to get the most large box, which obviously costs more to buy, but also costs more to put into the plane. All in all, I think it cost about €2,000 to send her back to Ireland. The main condition for my mum, who didn't really want her, was that she had to get spayed before she came. Now, it had always been my intention when she got to 3 or 4 years old to let her have just 1 litter of puppies, because I've always wanted basically my next dog and my next dog and my next dog to all come from the same line of dogs, where you can say, like, this is the granddaughter or the great granddaughter of your original dog. And I couldn't do that in the end, because I had to, it was the only way I could keep her, basically. My mum wouldn't take her unless I did the operation, so that's why she's never had any puppies. She was 18 months old by the time she got back to Ireland, and I went back as well, spent a few weeks there so that she acclimatised, got used to it. She already knew my mum, and then I just left, and she was still where she knew, if you get me. So it didn't seem to be too traumatic for her. And the journey also, she took the journey. I mean, obviously I didn't see the journey, but I know that when I picked her up the following day in Dublin, she seemed completely normal, and she wasn't, you know, like, she didn't appear to have gone to the bathroom on herself or anything. So she acted normal afterwards. So I don't think it was a traumatic experience. I hope it wasn't. So apologies for the mess, but I'm actually moving house at the moment, and that's what the next video is going to be all about. So please do subscribe if you want to know more about that. And actually, this video's taken so long to make that I am already here, and it's not a bad little gaff. I will show you in the next video. But one of the downsides that you may have noticed already in the clips where I'm sat on that sofa is that the black tiles simply refuse to be clean. There's nothing you can do. You clean them, you look, they're dirty again. So I've been gifted a couple of rugs, which you can already see that I've laid down, and they have definitely helped this situation. I think it was maybe even 19 months that she was living back in Ireland. She lived in West Clare, right by the Atlantic Ocean, and she absolutely loved it, to be fair. She was very happy there, and she's ended up being a very good therapy dog. That first year I had, I was kind of depressed, I guess. Like I say, my relationship had broken up the year before. I was single, I was working really hard. The restaurant wasn't making anywhere near as much money as I was hoping it would when I first opened it. I was getting into debt and coming home every night to be on my own. Probably, I mean, my dreams, I used to dream that I was at the restaurant, because I had nothing else going on. Like, I would wake up, I would go and buy the stuff from Macro, and I'd go straight to the restaurant, and then I'd work all day, and I'd come home and I'd go to bed. So the only, like, nice little thing during that period was coming home and that dog wagging its tail and being happy to see me, you know what I mean? So in that first year, she was great for me. And then likewise, when I sent her to Ireland, the timing, the way the stars aligned, she ended up being fantastic for my mum as well. My grandparents were both still alive. They were like 90, 91. My granny actually lived in the UK, and she was Irish, but she lived in the UK, and she never came back. So my mum was over and back a lot, and the dog was coming with her, keeping her company. And then when my granddad sadly passed away, the dog was staying with my mum, and during a period when my mum probably wouldn't have wanted to leave the house much or communicate much with people, she was still being woke up at 6:37 in the morning by the dog, like, you know, like, take me for a walk kind of thing. Gave her something to do, got her out of the house, get out, get some fresh air, get up early. And then about 6 months later, my granny unfortunately passed away as well. And so again, I just think in the weeks and months after that, I went home both times, but I was only there for a brief period. And once I left, I think the dog was very therapeutic for my mum.
Oi, oi, oi! Out! Out! Oi! Bastard!
Look, I know people, I don't know them, but I've looked into this since I bought this thing. Firstly, you shouldn't completely believe it anyway, because I saw quite a few results from people that had bought like 3 or 4 different kits from different companies and got completely different results. And some people that sent in, like, they did it to themselves and still got back like 100% golden retriever or whatever. So, you know, this is just a bit of fun at the end of the day. So it's not completely like proof, but you know, these are supposed to be professionals. So let's see. I hope I don't get like 100% Iberian sheepdog or something. You know, it's like, anyway, let's find out. So I ended up only staying out of Thailand for about 6 months in the end, and so I could have, in theory, brought her back a lot sooner than I did, but like I say, she was doing some very good work there in Ireland, and she was also very happy. But once my grandparents had passed away, I said to my mum, I think that she'd be very happy spending a lot more time over here, and I ended up being right. But obviously for that to happen, the dog had to come back. And so after spending more than 1.5 years in Ireland, she's 3 years old by now, she came back. So luckily sending her back to Thailand was a hell of a lot easier than it had been to send her to Europe. Obviously we had her passport and we've done it all now, but in general it is easier to send this way than it is to send in reverse. In terms of traumatic things that have happened to her, I guess well, she's been bitten a few times. I would imagine in her life maybe 10 to 12 times total that she's been bitten. She doesn't pay attention to other dogs, very, very rarely. She doesn't really like other dogs. She doesn't want to fight them, but she ignores them. And so she got bitten quite a few times, but it was nothing too bad. She had to get on antibiotics, obviously, if they pierced the skin or something, which they did a couple of times. She never fought back on any of the occasions. She doesn't know how to do it. The only real sort of big drama that's ever happened to her was shortly after her 4th birthday. I took her for a walk, me and my girlfriend at the time, and while we were walking along the beach, she suddenly started staggering, and we were joking. I said, look, she looks like she's had a bottle of Jack. But then we cut the walk a little bit short, went back, she got a drink of water, went and sat in the corner, and we got ready for dinner, had a shower and stuff. It's not uncommon for her to be out of breath after a walk anyway, and to just go to sleep or sit still for a while. So we got ready, went out, said we're going for dinner, left her there. And then when I came back an hour later, whatever, she wasn't at the door to say hi and like, where's the food or whatever. And so I knew straight away something was wrong. And so I went into the house and she was still in the exact same spot that she'd been in when we came back from the walk. And now she had sort of a worried look on her face, and I'm calling her and she's just not coming. And she's paralysed, completely paralysed from sort of there down. She could still move these two and she could move her head, but everything else was completely dead weight. By now, because I'd been out for my evening dinner and that, it was probably 9 o'clock at night. And so there was no vet. I live on an island. Maybe there is, but I don't think there was a 24-hour vet. There might be now. So I thought she was going to die overnight, to be honest, because it was so sudden. Like, we went from like having a walk, so she's walking like she's drunk, so she's paralysed. I thought by the morning she'd be dead. Before we went to bed, we kind of figured out that she was going to be okay. or that's not true. I was still worried that she might die, but I knew that she was in good spirits and that her will was still there, because if you stood on the other side of the room, first I was just seeing if she would take a treat, because that's when you know she's sick, if she won't take food. And she was taking a treat, and then my girlfriend stood on the other side of the room and said, "Do you want this?" And she started pulling herself with the front two. So the next day I took her to the closest vet, and I said, "There's something seriously wrong with my dog." And what I had to do to take her out was put a towel, wrap it around here and sort of lift her up, and then she'd use her front legs and I'd take her out and let her do her business and stuff. The vet tested her, and basically a tick had bitten her at some point, and I forget the name of the thing now, but basically tick paralysis, it's got some long name. And if you don't give dogs antibiotics, they basically can't, that's it, it's game over. So they can't walk. And so she said after 2 weeks she'll be walking completely normal, she'll be fine, it just takes time. Within about a week she was walking mostly normal, except the back right leg, she was kind of kicking it out as she walked. And so she's walking with quite a pronounced limp, which she'd never ever had before. And so after 2 weeks she was still walking like that, so the vet said, "All right, look, here's another 2 weeks of antibiotics." And after another 2 weeks she was still walking like that. After a month I took her back to the vet and said, "She's still walking with that limp," and they did another blood test and they said she doesn't have that condition anymore, it's gone. So whatever the reason is that she's walking with this limp, it's not the tick paralysis. But she'd never ever walked with a limp before that, and so I gave her another full month of antibiotics, but it made no difference, and she's been walking with that limp ever since. So she's had it now for more than 5 years. It just never went away, and some days it's really bad and some days it's not, and so I took her for scans and which was really, anyway, she never seemed to be in any pain, it never seemed to hold her back in any way. But if she runs a lot, she can't now, she's old, but if she ran a lot, she would really suffer with the leg that night. And so we started taking her for a swim every day instead of a run, throw the ball only into the water, so that she was exercising the leg and having to swim and still getting the excitement that she loves. So living in Thailand, you have visa issues all the time, and I was learning Thai back in 2019, and I'd already done beginner and intermediate, but now I needed to go and get a new part to my visa. So on, I think it was the 1st of February 2020, I left Thailand. It was supposed to be for 3 months, and I'd asked my mum to look after the dog again, and she had said no worries, on the condition that I was definitely back by this date in May. And I said, yeah, no problem, it's a holiday, 100%. What could possibly go wrong? And while I was getting on the plane, perhaps 1 or 2 days before that, I started hearing about this thing called COVID. When we arrived in Sydney, it was the very first day where they had like officials, government agents or whatever, or maybe just airport staff, just asking people casually, have you just flown in from China, or have you been to China in the last couple of days? I remember the guy behind me going, no, and he was Chinese. And he was like, well, where are you from? And he goes, oh, I'm Chinese. And he said, well, he looked at the ticket and he's like, Beijing or something. He's like, so why did you say no? And my girlfriend at the time came with me. And I remember about a month in, her saying, should we just go back now? Because we were supposed to stay for 3 months. And I was like, nah. I said, this is nothing. I said, mad cow disease, Ebola, foot and mouth, swine flu, bird flu. It happens every couple of years. You hear about it and it just goes away. And then next thing, everyone was singing on their balcony in Italy. And next thing, Thailand was closed. And I was calling my mum and saying, Mum, I can't come back. Please, you have to stay. And then it didn't end up being a problem because there was no travelling going on anyway. And so she ended up dog sitting again for 11 months. So I didn't get back here until December, what with quarantine and that. It was December 2020. So we didn't see each other for about 10.5 months, and it sucked. But when we did get reunited, it was lovely. And she weed all over the floor from excitement. And so the only other really big thing that's happened in her life, about a year ago exactly, when we adopted this little one. And for the first 6 weeks, she absolutely hated her. I didn't even want to be in the same room as her, hated her. About 6 weeks in, she started to sort of tolerate her, put up with her, but still let her know a lot of the time, like, get away from me, you know, like, go away. And then for about 6 weeks, she sort of started to like her, I think, and played with her a little bit and stuff. And now, you have to whisper it, but she loves her. But the only thing they don't do is sleep in one bed together. She's tried a few times, but this one won't have it. She just barks and says no. She's constantly making little games with her, and she plays, and what with her bad leg, I have to break them up a lot, but it's sometimes, obviously, it is the staffy that's doing it, but a lot of the time, it's you, isn't it? It's you starting the trouble. Me old mate, 9.5 years I've had her. I can't stress enough, I don't really care. I was going to swear then, just because I've drunk alcohol. I don't care what these results say. Nothing but love. She's asleep behind me there on the floor. Here we go. Oh! Oh! Wow. I wasn't... Wow. I wasn't expecting such comprehensive results. Wow. She is 80.2% Labrador Retriever, and the remaining 19.8% is Golden Retriever. Wow. Wow. And when you're doing it, they like ask you all these questions about, you know, questions basically. And I didn't fill out any of them because I was like, why? It's like we'd go in to see a psychic and you're like, yeah, so like, this is what I want you to say. And then they say it and you're like, oh. It's like, so I didn't tell them anything. And, you know, so that's really interesting. There's no, like, I thought it'd be like a bit of a Harrods, to be honest. I was expecting more of a, I thought it'd be 4 or 5, like a little bit of like 1% of this and 8% of that or something. I was hoping Labrador would be like dominant, but wow. And that's pretty much your story so far, isn't it? Hey, you're going to be 10 years old in March. OAP now. Yeah, you're a good girl, aren't you? You're a good girl. Still loves going for her walks. Still loves her food. Just a bit slower than before. Just a bit slower than she used to be. Jumping's out of the question now. I've got a pick-up. And when I first got it, she wouldn't accept that she had to be lifted up. She didn't want to accept it. And one day I just said, all right then, go on, try, because she was getting really grumpy about it every time. Like, no, I don't want you to lift me. And so I said, all right, go on then, jump up. And she tried to jump up and she realised I was flat on her arse. And after I made the last video a month ago, she had to go for a little eye operation, or it was around the same time actually, I think. But she had to go for an eye operation, and the hair's mostly grown back now. It was this side, so there was no hair, just here. The main thing for me now is just as long as possible. As you can see, I mean, for a Labrador, we've kept her in pretty good nick, I think. She's got a bit of a limp, especially considering she's got a limp. I think we've kept her in pretty good nick. Labradors that are 9 or 10 are normally pretty fat, and I, like I say, I just want her to live for as long as possible and to have a healthy life and to be able to get out and about. She still loves going for a walk and chasing after things and that. She's a good little girl.
Let's go get some din-dins then.
Hey, hello. I'm just reading your results. All right. Let's have something nice. Come on. Me sat in my boxes is not very appealing, is it? I did say I've been out for a few bevies.